Welcome to the Internet, live from the Marriott Library at the University of Utah. This is the Red Line Podcast. I'm your host, X number of raccoons in a trench coat, and these are my co-hosts...
Kyle Holland and our guest writer,
Alex Fielder. Today we have the two designers of the Rio Grande Plan on, Cameron Blakely and Christian Lenhart, to discuss an exciting idea for grade-separated regional rail in Salt Lake City. We'll talk design, development, feasibility, and more after the news.
Trademark. Passenger rail service will return to the tracks in Orange County that were disrupted by landslides and sea surges nearly 6 months ago. Metrolink and Pacific Surfliner trains are expected to begin running once again April 17th, returning rail service to an area that has gone without for months.
Yeah, until the tracks wash into the ocean again.
How did it take that long?
The tracks are basically
Washed
in the
into
ocean.
the ocean.
Wait, they fished them out? Is that what you're saying?
And they had to do a bunch of shoring up and making sure that
it is ocean, pile of rocks with tracks on them, land.
So then they get...
Wait, so they're almost at sea level?
They're almost literally
Here, I'll show
in
you.
the
Okay,
water.
wait. Because I imagine they were like on a cliff.
No.
Like
No.
right next to the edge.
Maybe they
No.
used to
Just
be.
to make it scary.
No.
Okay. This is what we're looking at mostly.
Oh.
Like, there's just a pile of rocks, tracks, cliff.
I hope they weren't surprised
this
by
one's
that.
good as well.
See, that's more
cliff,
wise
other
picturing.
cliff.
Yeah.
Ocean.
So, they added more rocks, so hopefully it'll be fine until they wash away
There you
again.
go. There's another one.
Were they
Cliff.
surprised that it washed away?
Probably
I
not.
No,
hope- I
because it
hope
keeps
not.
happening. Oh, here's another great picture where it's like literally
okay.
5 feet above sea level.
I kind of question this alignment.
Well, they didn't have anywhere
For
else to
good
put
reason.
it. It's very mountainous between
Yeah.
LA and San Diego. So,
That's an old route. So.
Well, maybe they should. I don't know.
finish California high-speed rail so you don't need this thing anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that would
Good
be
idea.
hilarious.
That'd
We
be
could
good.
never
Or just, I don't know, elevate it maybe.
finish California high-speed rail.
Just put it on old wooden
Oh, yeah.
trusses.
Trestle, yeah.
That is actually probably not the worst idea.
Just for
Yeah.
sections of it. Like
Yeah. The
I-
parts that are in
They
the
did
water.
that across the whole Great Salt Lake. They can
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
now
but now it's an embankment, though.
put,
more rocks.
yeah.
Extra rocks.
Just make a mountain.
I really want a
Of rocks.
kayak under the embankment. I need to bring my kayak here eventually.
Good plan.
In the Great Salt Lake.
Mm-hmm.
We can hang it on the wall.
I didn't think you could get under it. I thought they...
There's probably bridge
No,
sections.
there's a way that they've opened it up now so that water can go through.
Isn't there? Are there like bridge sections?
There's one.
I thought they just smashed it.
Well, you can still go across.
Okay.
I don't think it's used very much because it isn't useful anymore, despite being like, the most impressive piece of rail infrastructure in the state, but,
Well, I know they filled like rail cars with ballast and sank them to create the
That's
whatever you
This
call
is
causeway. Yeah.
That's amazing.
This is true.
Yeah.
In other news, recent studies have shown that Gen Z is driving far less than other recent generations. In 1997, 43% of teenagers had their licenses by age 16, and 62 had them by 17. Now, those numbers have dropped to 25 and 45% respectively, leading experts to question whether this will be a sustained drop. Stated reasons for Gen Z's apparent reluctance to take up driving include high costs of entry, environmental concerns, as well as concerns by parents and potential young drivers alike that driving is increasingly unsafe.
All valid concerns.
Yep.
I think that this is mostly going to be a fluke, if I'm completely honest with you,
Yeah.
because American-built environment go burr,
Mm-hmm.
and the only thing that go burr in American-built environment outside of a very, select number of places is car.
So, maybe if we made some long-term changes to the built environment, maybe some sweeping zoning reforms.
Communism.
Oh.
Yeah, checkmate, meatball Kyle.
I feel like one thing that would
Not meatball. What? Ramen Kyle.
ramen Kyle.
You get it because
Yeah,
you
no,
like
I get
ramen.
it. I've been owned. You were saying, Alex?
I think one thing that would honestly we should have already national ID. I feel like it's stupid
Good
that you
Lord.
have to have a driver's license to have identification in
Well, in
this
Utah,
country.
there's a
Well, we have
non-driver.
national ID. It just sucks.
No, Social Security is not national ID.
Oh, yes, it is.
No,
it's just
it
completely
is.
insecure
It
and
shouldn't
sucks.
be.
It is ever since they took the not to be used for identification mark off the card.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Well, Utah has a non-driver's license state ID card that you can theoretically get.
I've
Yeah.
never seen one of those.
It's for if you're poor,
Like,
is the
so poor
idea,
you can't afford your driving classes.
which is bad.
Still, there should be another way
Another
without needing a
thing.
license.
Not
But I don't know.
Yeah, anyways, maybe we should take advantage of this desire to not drive by making a built
Better
environment
idea.
that makes it fun to not drive.
better idea. We don't do that and give children cars.
Even
And then they
better
go
idea,
crash.
all cars drive themselves, so you don't
Yes,
need a license.
Exactly. And then we just have the same number of cars, but they drive
Uh-huh.
themselves.
Yeah.
And as my
And
cybersecurity
kill more pedestrians.
as my
Oh,
cybersecurity
naturally,
professor
yeah.
said, cars will no longer require people to cause accidents.
Yeah,
like that
that's
quote.
correct.
Now, if we can use ChatGPT to automate insurance claims, the whole industry can do itself, and we can have our nice livable cities.
I wonder when, like, okay, this is a completely wild tangent, but I wonder when, like, credit repair agencies, who send requests to,
Uh-huh.
like, agencies over and over and over again to make them, like, raise your credit score so you stop sending them requests. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
If you have bad credit, go do it because it's literally magic.
We live in a society.
I wonder when they're just gonna start using like ChatGPT to just like send more of those requests.
Yeah, I
because
mean,
like you already need like 1 man hour to send like 4,000 of those requests. So what if you need
computers.
1 man hour to send like 12,000 of those requests?
And then the receiving company uses ChatGPT to help filter and process the requests.
So it takes the same amount of time for them to filter and process the requests.
Yes,
as it
it's
used
just
to.
more of them.
Yeah.
I was talking with a friend about this, about legal discovery, because they're thinking, hey,
Oh,
use
no.
ChatGPT to do legal discovery. And then I'm like, no, but then the amount of data your processing will exponentially increase.
You can't destroy my paralegal's jobs. My paralegal just has to know how to code now.
Your paralegal needs to know how to write ChatGPT prompts, and now has 100 times as much information to make the computer sift through, taking the same amount of time.
Automation.
That excites.
This has been the news and tangents.
Yeah, so welcome onto the show. If you guys wouldn't mind introducing yourselves, your background, and how you two met and began this process.
Sure. Hi, I'm Christian Lenhart. I'm a civil engineer. I've worked on several transit projects in the state of Utah and lots of freeways around the country. And Cameron and I met as we were discussing these transit improvements online. We contributed together to make the Rio Grande Plan.
And I'm Cameron Blakely. My background is in landscape architecture and environmental planning. I have a real interest and passion for kind of urban design and transit-oriented projects. I've worked on the Ogden Master Plan, Downtown Master Plan that they released a little while ago. I helped with that. And then I've been involved in various projects out of Daybreak and in downtown Salt Lake. So
I think you just listed like 2 of the 3 places in the valley where this sort of planning actually happens.
yeah.
The other one being Sugar House.
Yeah. Yeah, anywhere the light rail touches.
Is your kingdom.
Yeah.
So we have a transportation engineer and an urban designer.
So together, do those make like grassy tram tracks?
But
I would love to see that,
I
actually.
wish.
Either grass inside the tracks or the tracks below the grass, one or the other.
that works. Okay, so do you want me to do the questions, or are you going to continue?
Oh, well.
I can do it.
Yeah, you can do it. We can have you read it.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, what is the Rio Grande Plan and what's it attempting to accomplish?
Yeah, we want to give some context for our listeners who are not from Utah.
The Greater Salt Lake
perfect.
City metropolitan
Or
area.
if they are from Utah and they don't know.
Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, basically, the Rio Grande Plan is a plan to restore rail service to the historic Rio Grande Depot in downtown Salt Lake. Back in the 90s when the city was preparing for the Olympics, a lot of money came in to shorten overpass viaducts And they ended up shifting the rail lines from, originally they ran down the middle of 5th West, to meet up. There's the Rio Grande Station and then the Union Pacific Station. And they moved them further out closer to the freeway and ended up developing the Gateway Mall area, which a lot of people know about.
Yeah,
but it sort of left these two stations high and dry.
Yeah. Didn't they try and kind of just push back the industrial perimeter of the city farther west towards the freeway to open up more land?
Yeah. Initially, that was kind of the original intent, right? The Gateway Mall was Utah's first outdoor mall, this premier development, at the time. and yeah, it was an attempt to increase kind of the economic development opportunity as the Olympics were approaching.
And it was a very good plan. I mean, those viaducts going into downtown, if you imagine where the freeway is now, it's about between 8th and 7th West, and these bridges would go down the middle of these streets, 5th and 6th South, and they would only come down to land at about 3rd West.
I've seen some old maps, and there used to be like spiral ramps where there are now buildings.
Yeah, right across from Pioneer Park and other things, like freeway ramps. So these things needed to go. And the reason they were built in the first place is because the tracks were built down 4th and 5th West.
Yieldy industrial city sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So back in the day, like Utah, the history of Utah streets in Salt Lake City is very fascinating. How like the city right-of-way was extremely wide, but it wasn't all used for transportation. There's like people planting gardens in the streets originally, and trees, and the creeks would go down the street. These are just like public right-of-way.
I think we should bring that back.
Yeah, I think we should too. So anyway, when the railroads came in the 1860s, 70s, where else would they go? They went right down the middle of the street, just like everything else. And that lasted all the way up until the 1990s, which you can imagine has all kinds of problems. And so the Rio Grande Plan is addressing these problems that were never actually solved. We're not really restoring something. We're kind of restoring stuff. We're making it better than it ever was before. The goal is to take the tracks that currently would have been pushed from 5th West, where they would interface with the Rio Grande Depot. They've been pushed to 6th and 7th West now. If we can put them back on 5th West, except underground, below grade, underneath the street, then you can have the trains sail through downtown, no more grade crossings. You can reuse the old train station that used to be there. And the space that's now taken up by rail yards, there's about 50 acres of land that's just empty rail yards. You can turn that into more downtown, more residential areas, more business areas. And in turn, that 50 acres of redevelopment will pay for the cost of putting the train tracks below grade.
Cool.
Well, I'm going to be honest, we all love the plan.
We do all think this is an amazing plan, and it should come into existence in about 5 minutes. I mean, preferably 5 years ago, but yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We would.
And I've heard a lot of comparisons drawn between this project and Denver Union Station, which is the poster child success story of this sort of redevelopment.
We took inspiration from there too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, you must.
Yeah, so how does this compare and contrast to Denver's project?
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a few similarities. I think some of the biggest differences are, Denver Station is a terminal station, so the tracks kind of dead end, whereas our proposal, it would be a through station. So in some ways, it's sort of a Denver plan perfected, because there's a lot of efficiencies that you get with a through station.
Well, I'd bet. In terms of space, and the Frontrunner North line is so successful, we now have Frontrunner South, so that's just more opportunities for passengers.
Just if you look at the nightmare of service patterns that Denver has on their light rail and their regional rail networks because of this terminal pattern, like if you want to go from the airport to, the far west reaches of the metro area, you got to stop at Union and take a transfer to a line that runs every 30 minutes from a line that runs every 15 minutes because, they decided they're going to do two separate systems terminating at the same station. So this would, I would say, be a significant improvement on that.
For regional and local service,
Yes.
Totally. Yeah, and then, infrastructure-wise, another difference is, so at Denver, their kind of underground portion is a bus terminal, whereas ours, would be a functioning rail corridor with platforms. Christian, you can probably speak to this a little bit better, but from my understanding, the bus terminal at Denver is twice the width, but half the length of our proposed train box. Is that
Right, if you measure the underground portion of our proposal for the Rio Grande Depot, just the part where the trains have platforms, it is slightly smaller than the bus terminal at Denver Union Station. And I mean, Denver Union Station did a lot of things that could have been improved. It's I'd say it's A tier rather than S tier, S for super, because what it does prove is that if you have this area that's near downtown and it's industrial, that nobody wants, but if you can just tweak one little thing and make it super accessible by public transit, then suddenly it's a highly desirable area. It flips from being a net negative on the city to being a super positive addition. And like if you just look at the 20-story apartment buildings or residential or commercial buildings going up around what was those 20 acres of rail yards, it's hard to believe that the transition happened in the last 15 years. And we think, if Salt Lake City can get that kind of level of investment that Denver got, that's that would be fantastic.
So, in terms of technical aspects of this project, how wide will the train box be? How many tracks are we going to have? How many platforms are we going to have?
Okay, well, all this is aspirational. We've proposed basically the golden ideal of what you can expect with the conditions that are there on the ground. Like if you were playing Cities Skylines, this would be
SimCity in my day.
SimCity, yeah, my day too.
All right, so all the dirt and rock is magic, and we can make these big cut and covers.
It's more not this magic, but maybe the bank account is magic. We'll put it that way. Everything else, the physical constraints are absolutely real. The train box would be about 124 feet wide, depending on the kind of structure used for your shoring walls. You'd have 6 tracks in the box. We're proposing 2 for Union Pacific and Intercity Rail. That replaces the 2 that they have running through their yards. There'd be 2 for the current front-runner service, north and south, and there'd be 2 additional tracks for potential transit reasons. And the reason you want to build that wide enough in the first place is you basically get one shot to build this.
Yeah.
No one's going to go back and rip up a train box and put it back bigger. This is your one shot to get it just right and build the capacity.
UDOT would. You've seen their freeway projects. Why build something once and you can build it at least 5 times?
They're getting better, UDOT. They did a lot of good planning for the Mountain View corridor, but basically everything along I-15 where they keep tearing down houses to widen the freeway. That should give people pause. Anyway, the train box itself would be about 1 mile long, which would make it on the short end of train boxes nationwide. I should specify, technically speaking, this is a trench, a capped trench. Civil engineers would call it that. Train box is a term that Cameron and I came up with to make it more palatable to the public.
A PR term.
I think it's a nice term because it evokes exactly the image you want.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Cameron, you did your job well.
I don't remember coming up with it, but I'll take credit if you want to give it.
And then this box would go through, if I'm correct, from about 9th South, go under 9th South, and then go all the way up to Union Pacific's big triangle.
Exactly.
That's correct.
So the old Grants Tower area.
And then I'm sure there would be some horrid flyover and unders for all the freight traffic, disentangling with the passenger traffic going all the different directions up by the triangle.
You could do that. Our box, our plan shows our box staying to the east of that triangle and ramping straight up, and so you'd have one track that kind of goes off to the side.
Okay, so you'd only need that if you wanted, say, front runner to Tooele, but that's a more long-term plan.
It is a long-term plan, and it's kind of the low-hanging fruit too. The tracks go out to Tooele. Tooele is an area where a lot of housing could be built if people really want.
It's a commuter suburb of Salt Lake, too.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you measure the area, available land area in Tooele, like the stuff that's not Army bases and stuff, it's still the size of all of northern Utah Valley. Like you could fit a lot of people in there that would need commuter service directly into downtown. So you should definitely, if you're a planner listening to this podcast, you should definitely leave that in your plans. Don't box yourself in. Leave that as an option.
Especially where there's just the one corridor to connect Tooele Valley to Salt Lake.
That's kind of like what we have.
Really build another one.
Yeah, there's not enough room to keep widening the highway. There's not enough room for anything.
That's kind of like we have north of the valley and south of the valley too. That pinch point.
Constraints.
Totally.
So how does the train box proposal you guys have in the plan compare to the Reno train box?
Yeah, so the Reno train box is actually very similar, and I mean, I think the main difference is I think the Reno one is a little bit longer.
2 miles versus
2 miles
one.
versus 1. But ours would be, Reno's carries 2 tracks or
2 tracks
3.
with room for a third.
Whereas ours would be ours would carry 6 tracks, so twice that amount.
Because you'd be making full use of these really wide streets.
Exactly,
yeah, you got the streets. Why not use
Especially
them?
your
Yeah.
Fifth West, which is still kind of a bit of an industrial wasteland.
Totally.
And, like, you're not ripping much of anything up. It's just dirt.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
And that's another good point that I don't know if it was mentioned earlier, but yeah, the entire train box fits within the existing
Yeah.
street right of way, and so it's not like there would be any private property acquisitions needed
Nope.
for this. You just kind of plug and play.
And thankfully, no tunnel boring.
Oh, we're not putting this 300 feet
We
underground
also
and
don't want
mining
it
out
to
the station.
cost, $10 trillion per
Boring.
foot.
Right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we don't call this a tunnel. Never, ever,
a
ever.
train
because-
box.
A train box. And it's not actually accurate to call it a tunnel because you don't have.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not a tunnel. It's there's no unmanaged earth on the top of this
It's
structure.
a big pit that just happens to have concrete decking over the top.
Concrete
Exactly.
decking. See, that's the difference. If you have a tunnel, then you have to build a structure that's strong in every direction. This one, you build it so it's strong in the outward direction.
And then I guess you can like put a bus on top if you want.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a parking garage structure. Like, take
Yeah.
the parking garage behind the Wells Fargo building. If you unstretch that, right, it's about a mile long. Yeah, so it's the same kind of structure.
This sort of infrastructure comparison makes me wonder why we haven't built this plan already if we're building stuff like that.
Yeah, we need to market it to UDOT. We just need to
Put it in
punch the
terms of stuff
parking.
they've already
Yeah.
built.
And
It's
just-
going to cost as much as this many parking garage stalls.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, the parking garage is built on one plot of land. It doesn't have to deal with underground utilities. So
Yeah,
it's. I'm just trying to show people that this is not flying cars from the future.
No.
This is something we know how to build. And if you were to go to your average construction company and say, build me a capped trench on 500 West, they'd know what you're talking about. They've got the equipment to do it.
The main issue would probably just be utilities and ground conditions, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and even then, like, you can build tunnels, or not tunnels, I made my own mistake.
Trenches.
You can
Get out.
You can do subgrade infrastructure work. How about that? You can do that wherever you want to, just so long as you're willing to reinforce your structures enough. Lots of people got to see the tunnel at the airport connecting the two concourses together
Yeah.
as it was under construction. The big window, you could take so many cool pictures of, count how many pieces of rebar reinforcement are going in per meter and all that. It's really fun. But then you can say, if that's what they needed to do in this area where the water level is really high, like they actually needed to take these piles and sink them down into the ground, not so they have a structure foundation to hold the thing up, but to hold the tunnel down. Because the tunnel is full of air and the groundwater is around it. The thing is buoyant. It would float to the surface and cause this huge bump in the ground if it wasn't tied down into the subgrade. And like that's so much more difficult than what we're proposing.
Yeah.
How much does it cost?
Or how much
How
do
much do
you,
you think it
not
costs?
being a government agency with a few $1 million to drop on a study, think it should probably cost?
Oh, well, we've actually been told by Salt Lake City not to discuss cost. The
Okay.
reason is that this is kind of something they're taking on as an exploration.
So maybe we don't want to make the same mistake every other major infrastructure project has and come up with a cost estimate at like 1% design.
Yeah, that's probably wise. I mean, especially in the current economy. I mean, like, costs of construction has just been, like, so volatile in the last several years.
I guess the main thing you have to sell with cost is where are we going to recoup the money? Because I don't think UDOT's going to want to fork over too much of their transportation investment fund money. And I've heard proposals in your plan about, like, a special tax district sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of funding opportunities and mechanisms that the city could look at as a way to kind of recoup a lot of the construction costs. They did something very similar in Denver, and they were actually able to pay off in Denver, they had a variety of funding sources. You know, some came from kind of local and state funding matches, and then a big chunk of it was also federally funded.
That's good. That's always good to have.
Yeah, which is always a nice resource. But they ended up from the development, they ended up paying off the federal loans 10 full years early.
Nice.
And I think, it's not a mystery to anyone that Salt Lake's economy is booming right now, and there's, a lot of interest in growth and development. And so I think that, whether it's a TIF district or, other sort of funding mechanisms to incentivize development in this newly opened land, there's a lot of ways that you could recoup a lot of that cost, and also create an amazing neighborhood in the process. Right?
Oh yeah,
There's a huge deficit of affordable housing, and there's a lack of green space on the west side, and so you could easily kind of build in all of these policies and development regulations as a part of the plan to make sure that you're accommodating some of those issues.
Yeah, that's the hardest part of any part of this project is the financing of it. The engineering is pretty straightforward, but getting people to agree that each individual agency to agree that this is worth their specific money is going to be the biggest challenge. And when I say we aren't allowed to discuss costs, it's not because we're scared of it. It's just the project will pay for itself, depending on how, whether it's 10, 15, 20 years, it will return its investment.
Might take longer, might take more taxes, might take less time, might take less taxes.
Exactly.
Might get more federal funding, might get less federal funding.
Yeah, so that's what we're not promising. It's the time frame within it will pay itself off. So, just a floating variable there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I noticed you mentioned the stakeholders and agencies who are wanting or not wanting to shell out money. So there are two kind of big variables in this plan that we haven't addressed so far.
Yeah.
And those are the Union Pacific Railroad Corporation and the Utah Transit Authority, the latter of which has expressed what I would call a forceful non-interest in the project so far.
Probably because they have no money.
Well, yes, but, they're going to know more about this than other people. So
let's start with UTA, I guess.
Let's start with UTA. Has UTA been brought into consultation with the city? Have they expressed any interest in the project thus far?
Mm-hmm. So members of UTA have been present at a couple of our presentations that we've given. For the listeners that might not be familiar, I'm assuming the article you're referring to was a news article released a few weeks ago
In the Tribune?
Yeah, I think it was in the Trib, and someone was interviewing Carlton Christensen.
Carlton Christensen.
He's like the head of the UTA?
Board of the UTA directors.
He's the chairman of the board.
Chair, yeah.
The 3-person board that directs the...
Yeah. But basically, I mean, it sounds like they're... Yeah, that was a good way of putting it. Just forceful lack of interest. I think UTA, they've put a lot of time and money and thought into their current station plan of how they can, retrofit the existing Salt Lake Central station to kind of meet their needs and to have, a UTA headquarters building. And I think that there's just some hesitancy to kind of turn away from that and adopt and accept kind of a new...
Except that their plan
vision.
for Salt Lake Central is kind of...
short-sighted.
Maybe not the
Terrible?
best grounded plan.
Yeah.
It's not like rooted in good access to downtown. It's not rooted in good bus service in every single compass direction. It's not rooted in development. It's just like some concrete.
It was
Exactly.
supposed to be a temporary station, right?
Yeah.
This is the funniest part of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, the Amtrak station
Oh,
that's out there,
The Am Shack.
yeah, it's literally a double-wide trailer that they kind of plopped out there, like, we'll get to this someday.
And their platform is worse than UTA's.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think UTA, I don't think that article or kind of their lack of interest is a deal breaker. I think that if the right players can come to the table, and ultimately this is going to have to be something that's probably led by Salt Lake City. Even though there's going to be many stakeholders, Salt Lake is going to have to be kind of the champion. And so if there's, if Salt Lake City can kind of push this forward And if UTA can see, the benefits and that this is actually feasible, then I think they'll start to come around. And one exciting piece of news while we're talking about news is that Salt Lake recently won a $2 million federal grant
For a study?
Yeah,
that's really good.
formally study this plan. It's a study to look at the east-west divide and how to mitigate some of those barriers.
It's a good spin to take on it.
Yeah, but in the grant proposal, they call out the Rio Grande Plan specifically as one of the options. So I think that out of this this formal study that the city is now undertaking, we're going to get a lot of clarity. And there's going to be, it's no longer going to be just a grassroots effort of two citizens.
This is now just sitting on the desks of insert politician.
Exactly.
This is the thing. Here's the benefits. Here's the drawbacks. Where's our money?
Yeah. So hopefully, if they find out of their research and study that the same conclusion that we've come to, that this is feasible, that this is the smart move, then hopefully a lot of those other stakeholders would buy in.
And I'd still speculate for UTA, it's probably mostly a money thing. They're stretched quite thin on discretionary funding.
As we know, there are still several $100 and most of $500,000 in bond repayments from Frontlines every year. So I could understand why they're hesitant to undertake capital expansion at this time.
So hopefully we can get bigger pitch-ins from the federal government, from state transportation investment, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just second that. I have nothing bad to say about my former employer, the UTA, or Carlton Christensen. They do a fantastic job with the resources they're given. And
if
I were presented with this plan and say, here, do this thing that's going to be at least hundreds of millions of dollars.
We're already in debt. We're barely pulling together bus service.
Right, yeah. So this is absolutely should be a Salt Lake City project that should be led by Salt Lake City. And it would be nice if they expressed more support to Salt Lake City to say, if you lead this, we will follow.
That would be good in terms of getting the state and the federal government on board.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, in that grant application that was sent to the U.S. Department of Transportation, the one that won, actually, we sent, Cameron and I were part of both applications. The first one that didn't win, and then just to show the city really does care about this, they sent in a second application.
Nice, which did.
Yeah, which
and
did. And apparently the U.S. Department of Transportation was pretty excited too, because we got the third highest amount out of all the 40, 50 grant applications. It was pretty good.
It's a good project.
But in that application, there were various letters, and there were some from the various freight railroads who have investment in this, and they say, this is tracks to an urban area. We'd like to be able to improve our own infrastructure. Obviously, it'll take some contributions from the railroads as well. Like in the Reno project, Union Pacific had their tracks going through downtown Reno. There was 12 different railroad crossings in a 2-mile stretch. And it was in their interest to close that down as well because, they get fined when their trains block the tracks. There's pedestrians that get hit, and that causes freight delays and lawsuits and all kinds of problems. It's better for them when they don't interface with the public. They love to separate themselves. So if you can find a way, was it 2 weeks ago, someone was hit by a train?
That was, I believe, a UTA train.
It was a UTA train.
That was Friday.
Yeah, most of the recent fatalities were
working that
UTA trains. This one, the one last year, the year 2 years before. Yeah, it's mostly UTA trains, but at the same time...
those ones move,
they move
forward, at all, as opposed to just stop in the grade crossing.
Right, but it's still not good when your train blocks the tracks and
Yeah.
there's school kids crossing between the freight cars, climbing up them and getting over.
Yeah.
So anyway, they expressed their support for help in solving this problem. So
that's good that we've heard it because we have all been going back and forth on what we think Union Pacific
about
thinks.
Union Pacific is the greatest concern I've seen many people who are sort of interested in the issue express because, to put it politely, the Class 1 railroads have more power than the average state in terms of
they're older than the state. Union Pacific is from 1861, and Utah's estate is 30 years after that.
Yeah, so they have a lot of pull in any community that they're in. So that was a big concern for a lot of people. So if there is any amount of express support in
that's
documents,
really
I don't want to put words in their mouth. I wouldn't say support.
Okay.
This is politics. This is the world's most expensive game of poker.
Let's say expressed openness.
Okay.
Which is a great start. We don't want to just, hey, don't mess with our tracks, go away.
Yeah, the fact there's a foot in the door is impressive.
Yeah. So, I mean, I haven't had direct contact with them, but I meet people who say, I like your plan, and I've talked with so-and-so at Union Pacific. I go, wow, what'd they say? And they have these concerns, and we, pass it along the chain up and down. And basically, the sense I get is that if some concerns can be met, if this can be constructed to Union Pacific standards.
So basically, are we going to spend extra money to make the box wider and deeper and such?
Exactly. So if you see the renderings we put online or in our videos or whatever, we show two sections to our box. It's like a double barrel.
Deep part and regular part?
No, it's just a wide part and a narrow part. And the wide part goes to Union Pacific.
So
and
they
the
can
two
move
tracks.
like rockets or whatever.
Yeah. It's they call it a plate F clearance envelope, dynamic envelope. And then they have the Union. I put 4 tracks of UTA on the other side in the narrower part.
Which is normal.
I mean, transit vehicles, they're much more regularly shaped. They're better maintained. They can go closer together.
And a lot smaller foul zone is what he's
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Foul zone, yeah, you got
Yeah.
it.
Front runner, so.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Cool.
And then our other biggest concern with Union Pacific is how much they're going to want for their land. Because it could be, crappy industrial land, a couple million an acre. Ooh, we have you under our thumb. 20 million an acre, 200 million an acre.
Well, I don't think that Galvin Plaza is worth $200 million an acre.
No, I don't think so either. But my point is Union Pacific can kind of charge what they want.
They could if they wanted to. They'd also be on the hook for environmental remediation, which is a big deal since this has been a railroad site for 140 years now. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of interesting materials in that soil.
Back before we had safety.
So, I mean, there was a recent land swap, is what they call it, in Denver. This is separate from the Union Station project. It was called Burnham Yard. And they said, hey, Colorado Department of Transportation, CDOT, you have some land we want, and you really want ours. So let's trade. They were right. Colorado DOT really did want that land. They're going to use it for a freeway. So they just switched lands and said, my deed for yours, and that was super easy. Kept the lawyers out of it. So I'm hopeful something like that could happen here.
That's a good idea, too, because extra land is something that the city and the state just sit on, and extra money is not something they just have lying around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just this great asset that's just lying there, not being used.
Yeah, totally.
I was under the impression that they bought the yard, Denver did.
Oh, this is Burnham Yard?
Yeah, the Burnham Yard.
Did I get that mixed up?
I think they bought that for $50 million.
All right, I'm going to have to...
But I could be wrong too.
Either way, that would have had to have been like a subsidized rate. Like $50 million seems like a steal in many regards for
That amount of land in that location.
Yeah.
I'm racking my memory now, trying to figure out which yard it actually was. But regardless, I mean, the point stands, and
It's a
$50 million, yeah, for the amount of land near downtown is probably cheap for that value.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully Union Pacific's on board. Hopefully we can play our cards right with extra land swaps. I hadn't heard that idea. I think it's a good one.
So, the Olympics.
Money. Investment.
As, people familiar with Utah's public transportation and transportation system in general are probably aware, the reason we have light rail, let's not even qualify it. The reason we have light rail in Salt Lake County today is probably because of the Olympics. Do you think that a 2030 Salt Lake Olympic bid, if successful, could have a positive impact on the Rio Grande Plan?
I would think so, very much. In fact, the 2030 Olympic Committee, they tweeted.
I think I saw that.
They tweeted out something referencing the Rio Grande Plan. So which may or may not be an endorsement, but there's at least interest level.
Foot in the door.
Yeah, the Olympic people want to show that they're good for the city too, and if we become the most popular way to improve the city, well then they're all on board.
Yeah. And I think that there'd be some huge hurdles because 2030 is right around the corner, but if the right people and the right decision makers kind of get in the right spot, then they can really grease the wheels on something like this.
Yeah, because this parallels our last Olympic infrastructure improvement a lot. More tracks, push back the industrial zone, redevelop.
Yeah, it's sort of like Yeah, it's sort of like what they did for the first Olympics, but more perfected.
And finish
Yeah,
the
it
job.
closes the loop, right?
Yeah.
Because the Rio Grande was left high and dry in the last one.
Yeah.
I think the Olympics were awarded in 1994, if I got that right.
Pretty quick turnaround.
And
Well,
UT had already, or Salt Lake City already owned the right of way for the Blue Line.
yeah, the tracks has been in the works for a really, really long time.
Yeah, it took a long time, but the Olympics are what pushed it.
So that would be your
It would-
difficulty here, is
Yeah.
that this plan is
That's-
new and hasn't been in the works for since trains were invented.
Well, Salt Lake City and UTA were studying light rail since Portland opened theirs, so that's about 86. So that's
8 years.
8 to 10 years before. So
Mhm.
it could push it, but there'd have to be some really impressive speed
Yeah.
if they
Well,
wanted to
good
get it
thing
done
we
by
have a
2030.
massive in-house construction department in UDOT and access to all sorts of private contractors.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, Kyle, but environmental studies and
Oh,
also getting the
yeah.
money.
Isn't this one of those things that's
And then
good for
like
the
the whole
environment?
the whole design process would take a chunk of time as well.
But
Yeah.
you have to do an environmental study whether or not it's good for the
Yeah, sorry, I forgot this was a project that is good for the environment and has a slam dunk for the environment, one might say, and has basically no impact on anything that's alive or any private property.
I'm sure someone will find a small salamander to hold it up.
Yeah, don't mind us just building under our asphalt
Look,
road in our city.
Draper found a way to delay the Blue Line extension
That goes
for
on
2
existing
years on an
right-of-way?
existing rail right of way. Or I shouldn't say Draper. I should say some citizens of Draper found a way with a moth or something to delay the Blue Line extension by 2 years. So, it happens. They
So the
they
pap-
tied it up in lawsuits.
So the paperwork and extra 5 years or whatever shouldn't exist for a project of this nature, but
Well,
it
let's
does.
hope none of these people have moved to 500 West Park District.
And there's something there aren't quite as many polite words. Suburban
People who
concerned suburban citizens on Fifth.
I mean, I do have sympathy for people who own things and expect certain value to stay, and then a civil engineer like myself comes along and says, this is where your freeway will go. And then
Well, of course, and it works 95% of the time, but it's the 5% of people who just come up with BS lawsuits over BS issues.
Or not BS lawsuits.
Sometimes
over
not
legitimate
BS
issues.
lawsuits.
Yeah.
It's hit or miss.
yeah, we shouldn't. We want to make sure the Rio Grande Plan, as we designed it,
good for everyone.
benefits. Yeah, right. Yeah, as a benefit for everyone. So there's areas where, just west of the Gateway Mall, where there's that nice green space. That in the median's extra wide because
yeah,
it was
that one.
the railroad corridor.
So all of that landscaping would go.
We hope not forever.
Well,
we
not
hope there's
forever, but
ways
for construction.
For construction, right? We'd need to come in there and go underground through that area, but we want to show that by connecting things together, you can make a better community. Like the Folsom Trail that was just finished, and that has that crazy turn up over 4 railroad tracks, then
Yeah,
2
and
blocks,
then
and down
down
over
the
4
back.
railroad tracks. Imagine that connection going straight to the Gateway with no railroad tracks.
Well, they also haven't even finished that one. It's supposed to go to the Jordan River, but they're not done yet.
Yeah, they didn't. The railroad right-of-way combined with the actual railroad, so they have to buy some land there. But that will go straight to the river, straight to the old Fisher Mansion, where they're going to have those, boat rentals and environmental, visitor center area. It'll be super nice.
So this project can integrate very well with existing green space.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pull the
And
green space towards
Add a
downtown.
whole bunch new, ripping up the rail yard and putting in residential. It's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of trees.
You put those trees, put them right next to the freeway, even so that you
Yeah.
can't even hear it from downtown. Or,
Good plan.
Yeah.
Plant some pine trees.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to say palm trees. That's what all the
Palm-
cool cities are doing, right?
Palm trees can't
Slash S,
survive
slash
here,
S.
I don't think.
Oh, they can't survive in lots of places, people. know.
That's true. For example, on Arrakis, where there are, exactly 24 palm trees on the entire planet.
I accept your gift in the spirit it was given.
Okay, so that's most of the meat of the topic.
One
we
more-
wanted to discuss some tangential stuff now.
Oh, before we get to that, different tangent before we do tangents. Buses. So Salt Lake Central is currently a big bus terminal, which means they've got a huge bus loop to store and end of line all those buses. However, I've noticed that they do all the bus pickups at like one stop. So if you're getting off front or getting on a bus, the buses will go out of the waiting area, then they'll come stop at the stop. The one stop, and the sign is like 9 routes on it, and they pick everybody else out and leave. So what I'm wondering is, in your vision for your plan, would you have a big bus terminal co-located with the station, maybe on some of the reclaimed street space on top of the cap, or would you go hide that off-site and just run the buses for pickup and then run them in town?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we developed our concept was to relocate the bus depot adjacent to the front runner and light rail line around the Rio Grande
On Rio
depot.
Grande Street, I saw in the renderings there was like a lot of bus spots.
Yeah, exactly. So basically between third South and Fourth South, the station would kind of sit right, or the you have the
concourse would sit up there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you have the concourse right behind the Rio Grande depot, and then just north and south of that concourse there would be room for buses. So you could have, the north end could be UTA buses or local buses. The south bay could be for
like all one Greyhound bus per hour.
Yeah, exactly. Or if we ever get more bus activity going.
For example, one that runs to Logan.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, if UTA is concerned about this kind of lost investment that they've put into the current bus depot, you could have a Rio Grande plan and the current bus terminal as is, and you kind of have this kind of dual-sided
It wouldn't be
transit development.
It wouldn't be too bad of a walking connection if they want to keep it. It's only 1 block on 3rd South.
At any rate, you can do bus pickup at the actual station.
I mean, it's like
too.
I'm personally not endorsing that idea, but it is an option, right?
The hybrid solution. I mean, one of the biggest objections raised by UTA operations people is that the bus maintenance facility is just west of the railroad tracks as they are. So it's really convenient to have all these buses dead end or end of line right at the maintenance terminal, because even moving 2 blocks, you've got these buses that have a very high rate of fuel consumption. It adds up.
$1 million or $2
Yeah.
Or
exactly.
It might just break and then you've got to tow it from the end of the line.
Exactly. Okay. It just makes it easier for operations. And so it makes some amount of sense to have the bus hub be where it is now. And as the buses move into downtown, take either 2nd or 4th South, would go right past the Rio Grande Depot and have major bus stations right there. It wouldn't be that bad of that's a pretty easy transfer too.
So it sounds like it'll be mostly whatever UTA wants. It's their buses, after all.
Their buses, whatever makes them happy. Like I said, this plan needs to work for everyone. If they're a stakeholder, they get what they want.
Yeah.
True.
And then next on my list of tangent topics.
Yes, my beloved Tracks Light Rail. So,
in your packet, there's a little picture with like the tracks on it that has been irking this one for a while.
Okay.
And it's
this.
Why does it go?
So my question is, why is the design concept to move light rail over to Rio Grande Street rather than keeping it on 4th West and having a pedestrianized street on 3rd South to connect to the terminal, or not terminal, station.
To the
whatever.
station. You've been spending a lot of time looking at this, apparently. So we actually Christian and I did go back and forth on that a lot of what,
Matt too, he really doesn't like that.
Because, from an efficiency standpoint, if you can remove 4 90-degree turns from a
The
track
train-
line,
Tracks operators will love you.
The operators will love you, and the train will physically pass through the area faster.
Yeah, exactly. I think the reason we decided to show it routed onto Rio Grande Street is more for conceptual purposes than anything. I think we wanted to show that the Rio Grande Depot
Is a hub transfer
the
point.
intermodal central station.
Even
You
though
have this flow of passengers from commuter lines to light rail lines to buses, all happening within one convenient space. I think as they hopefully get further into
like an actual
a design, that those sort of decisions would be made, and you could
in real life it's here. That's just 400 extra feet of walking.
Well, so I guess the reason this is stuck in my mind so much is because there's a lot of people who see the Rio Grande Plan as sort of an opportunity to reconnect the east and west sides of Salt Lake City, which I definitely agree with and is a worthwhile goal. But where I see the greatest utility and the greatest benefit in having something like the Rio Grande Plan is really increasing connectivity of all of our services together, because UTA's current plan for improving Salt Lake Central is to take tracks all the way down 4th South to meet up with the current terminus of the Blue Line, which would be basically the same thing.
Which is like this, but like actually bad and completely irredeemable. Like this, you bump it over 400 feet, then it's straight. But their plan is just hopeless.
So anyway, that's one of the things that I was thinking about in regards to the plan is
how does tracks play into
this? Because this is going to, if done properly, sort of revolutionize not just Frontrunner, not just reconnecting the west side, not just Amtrak or Union Pacific.
Because the square thing here,
really
the
everything.
Whole system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The square thing here would revolutionize tracks capacity.
Yes.
Yeah, having a circulator line going around downtown, maybe have special light rail vehicles, super long ones, and have those be the free fare vehicles. Everything else, I don't know. But I approach this from the perspective of a transit rider. Today, you get off at Salt Lake Central Station, and as much as we want to make fun of it, the one really good thing it does is it's super close to tracks. You just walk across this plaza, which is, as a plaza, it's pretty good. You get into the train right there, and off it goes. The train's waiting for you almost all the time. If you go to the Rio Grande Depot, you come up the escalators, you walk through the depot. I'm in Salt Lake City, but then you have to walk another half block to get to the train that will take you the rest of the way to downtown. How is that better? I understand what you're saying about operational efficiency, and we can argue about this a lot because they're both really good arguments to have. But I make sure we aren't the tail wagging the dog here. We want to make, from the public perception, a experience like what they expect. You get off a high-speed train in Madrid or some other European city, you step outside, and right on the front doorstep they've got a tram plaza, all the trams ready to take you around. And if that's the aspiration there.
Maybe this is a question best left up to the engineers in their simulations of, is having 400 feet less to walk and the objectively qualitatively better passenger experience a better end result than having fewer operational conflicts on 4th South, which is a disgusting feeder, and 2nd South. And
we're getting
hard
a little
turns.
too technical.
So I would love to see some numbers from engineering simulations about signaling conflicts, hard turns, walking time, you name it.
Yeah, as would I, right? Like Christian said, we approach this from a user experience standpoint, and from an urban design standpoint.
And as someone who's going to ride the thing anyways, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm the best eye for the raw, just first-time passenger experience. I see this in terms of raw numbers. How long does it take me to get to my destination?
Yeah.
But okay, you've also missed the most significant part of this.
Yeah.
If you take this shape and you turn it 90 degrees clockwise, it's the shape of Utah.
Whoa! you should have led with
It's the Utah Fare Free Zone. There you go. It'll keep. It's memorable.
Utah W, Portland L. And then other thing with
What? What are you talking about?
Is it the shape of an L?
They don't have a Pharaoh Square.
Exactly.
In
They
Portland anymore.
got rid of it.
Yeah, because it was promoting crowding because too many people were using it.
And then we could have one that's shaped like Utah. This is so great. And then other thing with tracks is there is the old rail spur coming off of 9th South going into Ballpark down there. We would love to see that integrated like that for capacity reasons. That way we have 2 street running tails instead of just one.
30 trains an hour to downtown instead of UTA's current cap.
This one would like to see some spot grade
That may be a
separations on
proposal.
tracks.
That is entirely out of scope for this project,
This is out of scope.
and is probably a proposal I will be myself with a civil engineer friend of mine.
Civil engineers, we make good friends. Very
This is
civil.
true.
You do.
Very
Well, be
polite.
sure to hit us up because I feel like we've had conversations about these sort of things. Like which alignment, or conceptually, does it make sense just to show a simple kind of T shape there?
And then
I
let
think
the
we're-
designers
Christian's been
work it
working
out.
on diagrams for grade separation projects in other
You need
locations.
3 on 21st South for 30, or not 21st South, on the
13th
main line
South,
between
17th
Ballpark
South,
and
21st.
21st. You need 3 grade separations. You can run 30 trains an hour over and get 10-minute frequencies on all tracks lines. I'm just saying, UTA, hit me up.
Are you listening?
Yeah.
So
But-
yeah, once this proves to be an objective smashing success, we get some more tracks money from the feds, and then
So,
I don't know, double
Like-
track service
out of
with
scope.
the new track capacity. But
Out
yeah.
of scope.
I mean, not necessarily so far out of scope. I mean, getting people to downtown, that's what this project's about. And hopefully when downtown becomes a better place to
Go.
have your office, go for entertainment, be a cultural center for lots of different groups to gather, or just an awesome place to live, then we can really have these conversations with people who use downtown a lot.
Okay, and then I think Alex and I were curious about the sort of scale of development that is planned for
Yeah.
around the Rio Grande.
So in the renders, we see a bunch of mid rises, and we here at the Redline Podcast love tall buildings. So, what's your vision for like this
What's
big
your
new
vision?
hip master plan community?
I love tall buildings too. Please, as tall as economically feasible.
I mean, one exciting development that happened just within the last couple of years related to that is, the city took a fresh look at its height restrictions in the Granary district, and so by lifting the cap of allowable heights.
Have they removed the cap, or is it just higher now?
They haven't removed it. They've removed it They removed it in a lot of areas in downtown.
In
But
D1 zoning.
But they haven't lifted it.
But
in
really
the
good
Granary,
start
but
in the
they,
Granary
yeah, it's a
area.
start. They've increased the heights that are allowed, and so yeah, ideally you could go as high as you wanted.
Yeah.
I think from my perspective, I'm much more interested in what does the pedestrian experience look like and feel like. Can you make improvements to that by having certain setback requirements?
Well, like the original New York City zoning that they invented, so light reaches the ground, sort of deal.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd advocate for pedestrianizing the insides of blocks. Like, we're bad at that right now. You should be able to just walk in between the buildings.
And that was another thing that we made sure to include in our kind of proposed development schematic is
In the little- in the pretty picture.
subdividing those our huge Salt Lake blocks. You can fit 9 Portland blocks in one Salt Lake City block, so you could subdivide these down to a much more granular scale and create pedestrian mid-blocks, greenways,
Huge courtyards.
courtyards. Another idea that we were playing with is, could you have a rail trail that follows the current rail alignment and convert that into a greenway?
be
that
fun.
would be very good.
So yeah,
That'd be
I think
fun. Add some
building in
interest.
multi-mobility and a comfortable and exciting pedestrian experience is something that we would love to see here.
This is always funny because most people we talk to aren't transit enthusiasts. They're more urbanists. And it's always Cameron who gets most of the questions. And they're always upset about, why did you draw the buildings this way or that way?
Yeah, I gotta say, the render looked like a pretty stock render of, wow, there sure are buildings here now, and not like a massive, we spent 40 hours on this vision of this skyscraper and that skyscraper and this park sort of thing.
Yeah,
So
the
I
renderings are just basically glass blocks that show there's a building here.
Like, I can understand that, but it comes off to me as, oh, I want tall building. That's not a tall building. Even though my brain understands that it's just filler, just to show that something's going to go there.
Yeah,
So
maybe
I-
at the next
I pity-
iteration we can add some more.
Yeah, once
more
y'all get some
detail
grant
and
money
some-
yourselves to make a new packet.
Exactly.
So,
What do we have next, air quality?
Cameron Blakely and Christian Lenhart, thank you so much for being on the Red Line podcast. Are there any things you'd like to say or promote before we go?
Yeah. This is the plug anything you want
Yeah,
section.
anything, Twitter, meetings. That you
Future events, yeah.
Yeah, where do we find you? How do our listeners
come
support
and
your
badger you
plan?
on the internet.
I think we'll be giving updates on our website, Rio Grande Plan, saltlakecity.com. Or .org. Apologies. Let me try that again. Rio Grande Plan, saltlakecity.org. I picked the longest URL in the world, I know. But
It's easy to type.
yeah, if you search for Google, it'll be there in there too. I'll try and include updates for future events if we do there. We don't have one planned currently. But I just want to say that even though for the next year or more, this is going to have a professional group of engineers and planners actually studying the potential of this, it's still really important that we build public support for the plan and do all we can to talk with friends, neighbors, legislators, local decision makers about the Rio Grande Plan and just get people excited. Because even if it turns out to be feasible, it's still going to be an uphill battle to make this thing, put this thing on the master plans. My dream is that the Olympics are announced either 2030, probably 2034, and people start looking around and saying, what can we do to make our city more presentable to the world? Beijing had the Olympics. Other world-class cities had the Olympics, and they're coming here in Salt Lake City. What can we do to show that the United States of America compares with the rest of these with using Salt Lake City? And here we go. The Rio Grande Plan, have people come to our city on a modern, clean transportation solution, trains into downtown, and show that we are a city that deserves to be on the same level as the rest. I think this that would get people excited. So, keep spreading the word as much as we can. Get people ready for that decision that's going to come up soon, and hopefully it will be decided in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, and I think just to echo what Christian was saying and to build off of it is, this plan, it's a way for Salt Lake City to become, a world-class city, but also it benefits everyone that lives here. I think, one of the main reason that Christian and I started working on this plan to begin with is because we both love Salt Lake. Even though we're not from here originally, we've grown to love this city and we see its potential. There's so much opportunity here. And, its citizens deserve something that they can be proud of and something that works for them. And the Rio Grande Plan there's never a magic bullet, but this is probably as close as you're going to get.
The benefits
as far as
for the cost of just like a mile-odd train box and some new track rails is incredible.
Yeah, exactly. The opportunity for connectivity, mobility, for providing new housing opportunities, new economic open space opportunities. It's just like, the list goes on and on of all the benefits that this could potentially provide downtown Salt Lake and the greater metro area. And so we're just excited at the opportunity to be able to make a difference in some small way, and hopefully the word can kind of keep getting out and people can keep excited about it.
And then this grant-funded study comes out. You got broad public support. We talked to all the stakeholders, and then hopefully everything lines up.
God willing.
Yeah, get all the pieces of the puzzle ready to put in place.
Yeah. Don't have two of them hiding under the couch.
Well, you've certainly got our attention, and we're excited to see what happens. So thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah,
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing us on.
Yeah, of course.
Happy to
It's fun.
have you.
And the library closed 2 minutes ago, so do
Okay.
do our outro as fast as you can.
No. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and to leave us a rating on iTunes and Spotify. If you like what we do here, please consider joining us on Patreon, where members get early access to our existing content, a Patreon exclusive every month, as well as additional benefits like stickers. Speaking of patrons, our patrons are... Am I doing frontrunner? Can somebody else do this?
I can do frontrunner. $10 a month, frontrunner. We have Zach Adams at lightning speeds, Curtis Herring, Devin Zander, Mike Christensen, and Phobos 2390. And our red line tier, $5 a month. We have Brian Smith,
How are you?
Christopher
I'll do
Whaley,
that.
Jacob Whitecotton, DJ Highwill Watkins, Reluctant LA Resident, Robert P. Walsh, and Scott Harris.
Blue Line, $3 a month. We have Just Cuz, Patrick Salas, Alex Stakelski, Ben Busouth, Bradley Bondi, Elijah Kensler, Ethan McDonald, Evelyn G4, Gonza 12, Jack Bates, Jack Dean, John Heron Gorman, Martine Hecker Martinez, Ultralice, Joyler Hall, and Seth.
Cool. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
These were great.